Hi students, I'd like to welcome you to Unit 5 of 1 Corinthians. Congratulations for making it thus far, and I've been so impressed and pleased by the quality of your work. I'm coming to you this week via video live from my messy office, and even though I try to be the most organized professor that I can be, you can tell that none of those organizational skills, if I even have them to begin with, have made into managing my office. It remains a mess. I apologize for that. It's just where the video is coming from this time. Well, this week we're going to be shifting gears into the next section of 1 Corinthians. We saw that given the crisis of schisms laid out in Paul's thesis in chapter 1, verse 10, that chapters 1 through 4 seem to operate as their own block of material as Paul slices and dices his way to the heart of these schisms. I would say that the heart of that schism is an Apollos party. Whether or not Apollos knows anything about it, that seems to be the problem. Well, there's going to be a significant shift that begins in 1 Corinthians chapter 5. That shift begins with the words, "It is actually reported among you," and Paul goes on to talk about the incestuous man, lawsuits among believers, and sexual immorality. I would suggest to you that the party that is doing the reporting, which Paul mentions in 1 Corinthians 5:1, remain Chloe's people. Chloe's folks, who we met in chapter 1, are bringing this report, and in chapter 5, Paul begins to address, piece by piece, those issues that have been brought to him. Now in chapter 7, the plot thickens because we get a different introduction to the business at hand. He says, "Now for the matters you wrote about." And in fact, this is a Greek construction, peride, now concerning, that will structure the rest of his letter from chapter 7 on. And so Paul is responding apparently to two reports, one from Chloe's people, orally, and one report from a written letter that is lost to us. I have you reading three different bodies of secondary literature to track through these chapters. For chapter 5, you're going to be reading an article, which is an excerpt from a book called Patronage and Power by John Cho. And this was a really groundbreaking book about 20 years ago that made the argument that what is behind the schisms at the end of the day is a dominant minority of Corinthians who are of elite and higher social status. And I think his illumination of the potential history behind the incestuous man will be very meaningful to you. Why would a man find himself in such a relationship in ancient Corinth? I think Chow's argument is quite convincing. You'll be reading Fee, tracking through lawsuits among believers and sexual immorality in chapter 6. Again, we'll be asking the same question. Who goes to court in first century Corinth, and why? What we're going to discover is the courts were the exclusive domain of the male and of the wealthy, of those of elite social status. And then in chapter 7, one of the most interesting passages or chapters in 1 Corinthians, you're going to be reading an article by Margaret MacDonald, who makes the claim that the schisms are really being caused by women. Women who have found their social status dramatically exalted by receiving Christ and by operating in the spiritual gifts within the community. So I think this chapter and arguments from scholars like MacDonald and also Antoinette Wire from San Francisco Theological Seminary that we'll get into later on during the course, I think they matter to we as Pentecostals. And so I'll be excited to read your papers and to engage with you on these exciting chapters. Keep in mind that reflection papers are due by Saturday night at midnight, which will leave us 2 days to discuss a paper that I'll post this week. Again, you'll get my personalized comments on your papers, and in the next couple days I'll also be grading your papers from the last unit. If you have any questions or concerns, feel free to email me at my seminary account. I look forward to a great week together. Take care, and God bless.